Hey everyone, it's Wednesday. Matt has a super busy week. He has tons of budget study sessions. So we're going to make this quick. We're going to do a lightning round, right, Matt?
Yeah, let's do a lightning round. We had quite a few items yesterday, so let's just do a quick spin through them.
Yeah, we have five. So the first one is pension obligation bonds.
Yeah, so the basic idea here is the city is considering issuing a special kind of bond that would allow us to borrow money, essentially, invest it alongside our other retirement funds, and then use any excess proceeds to help pay down our unfunded pension liabilities. I expressed significant concerns with this idea. It sounds to me a lot like from Wall Street in order to gamble on Wall Street. And of course, if our returns do not exceed the cost of the bond plus the management fees, we could actually be further in the hole. So I'm not sure we should be gambling with taxpayer money. That being said, I wrote a memo outlining the additional analysis I think the city ought to do, quite a bit of detail to it. It did pass, so the city will come back with a lot more analysis. Council did vote to move forward with getting the city validated or essentially authorized to be able to issue those bonds in the future if we want to, but I'm coming into this with a lot of skepticism.
All right, number two, return together. That finally made it back to the city council agenda.
Yeah, so we unanimously passed a new ordinance that will apply to a couple thousand hospitality workers in San Jose who lost their jobs as a result of COVID. And essentially what the ordinance does, it's called Return Together. It's giving preferential treatment to people who had jobs when their jobs come open again. And so it requires the employer, let's say in this case, the head of a hotel, to notify employees who were laid off due to COVID that their job is open again. And if they apply within a certain number of days, and I think it's 10 days, they get preference in that process, so they can regain their job. Certainly, I have concerns about the additional overhead for employers and the complexity and the potential legal liability. But overall, I think the spirit of this is right, which is, we want to get our workforce back to work, and as jobs open up, they should be made aware of those jobs and have an opportunity to come in and basically reclaim the job that's reopening. So I supported the spirit of it. We all voted for it, and I do think the extra time we took to try to reduce the burden on employers was well spent. So yeah, that's moved forward.
All right, number three, you and Councilmember Cohen put forward a memo about JPA. So you're probably gonna have to explain real quick what a JPA is.
Yeah, well, JPA is just a joint powers authority, and you can have different types of joint powers authorities. But in this case, the city was exploring issuing bonds to protect middle income housing. And this was actually a proposal that former council member Johnny Camus here in our district had put forward, I believe a couple of years ago now. So the state has a program that allows cities to form these special JPAs, issue bonds by market rate housing, and then restrict the amount that rent goes up over time to keep those units affordable for our middle income earners. Think of teachers, nurses,
City council staffers.
Yeah, members of my team, people who are in that kind of 80 to 120% of the median area income. We don't have a great solution for keeping housing affordable for them. Now, philosophically, the best way to keep housing affordable is to balance supply and demand, which means building a lot more housing. So I don't think this is any kind of silver bullet. I liked the idea. Staff has a lot of concerns with the way that these JPAs are structured and the fact that there are management fees and the city only has so much oversight of the agency. And so there's a lot of concerns. I won't belabor all the details. My memo was asking for staff to take more time to go back to some of the entities that have successfully done this in other cities and learn more. The truth is that council had not prioritized this for this fiscal year as a top priority. Staff expressed real concerns about both the model, but also their capacity to dig deeper and figure out how to make it work. And so ultimately, council voted yesterday not to move forward with this approach. It's unfortunate because we don't have any great solutions right now to addressing missing middle housing. I do think ultimately housing production is the best answer. So we'll move on, and hopefully, that'll be my focus, is figuring out how we build more housing.
All right, speaking of moving on, let's move on to something that I think is top of mind as we enter the summer: fireworks.
Yeah, huge issue. City's doing a lot on it and needs to do a lot more. Frankly, we did recently increase the fines, so we now have some of the steepest fines in the region for illegal use of fireworks, which is good. Enforcement is the challenge, and it's hard at night when it's dark out to positively ID someone in the act of setting off fireworks. The enforcement piece of this is challenging. We talked about that quite a bit yesterday. There are some new things the city's trying to do in terms of enforcement. The big vote yesterday, which was also unanimous, was that we moved forward what we're calling the social host ordinance, which is, if you are hosting a party in which fireworks are going off, or you've got a bunch of fireworks in your garage and your kids are setting them off, you can now be held liable. So this ordinance that's going forward will basically make it illegal to host fireworks in your home, or to host an event at a city park where fireworks are going off, and the host can be liable without having to identify the individual who, at that moment, who runs out into the driveway and sets off that firework at that moment. So they don't have to be caught in the act of doing it. So it basically expands liability for illegal fireworks. And the reason here, I know for some people this seems draconian, but the reason for our concern is really fire risk more than anything. I mean, certainly the noise and all the rest is an issue, but the fire risk is a very real concern. And representing our district, I mean, you can see in my background, one of our parks here in District 10, there is a lot of dry grass there. Much of our district borders on that kind of rural wildlife interface, and there's a real risk of fires actually burning down structures and even risking human life here. So that's a concern, and it is something that the city is going to keep working to crack down on.
Yeah, all you have to do is look around and you can see the hills are not green anymore. But on the topic of green, San Jose Clean Energy's rates. Last item. Yeah,
I like your transitions there. Those are good.
Getting better at this.
Yeah, impressive. So the fifth big item we took up yesterday, there were quite a few smaller items, but the other big one we just wanted to highlight for people was that your energy rates are going up. And I want to explain why for a moment, and then tell you what you can do about it. And hopefully we can put some links in the notes for people. The state charges something called the PCIA, which is the power charge indifference adjustment, I believe, and it's basically a fee that requires energy users, ratepayers, to pay PG&E, even if they're not using the PG&E electricity, for legacy costs of old energy contracts and investments in facilities. And so even though San Jose Clean Energy, which is our municipal-based energy program that everyone was opted into, even though our generation costs are actually significantly lower, 30% lower than PG&E on average, because we're using a lot more wind and solar, and the cost of wind and solar has come down dramatically in recent years. PG&E has used state law to ensure that it gets paid out for all of the legacy investments that it made in past decades. And so that charge is where this cost is coming from, and it keeps going up every year as PG&E is essentially realizing larger and larger losses on older infrastructure. And this is different from transmission. We're just talking about the generation of the power. We do still pay PG&E, everybody does, whether they're a PG&E customer or San Jose Clean Energy or Silicon Valley Clean Energy or wherever you are, we're all paying PG&E for distribution. They still manage the lines. There's no question about that. This is just on the generation side. So anyway, that's what's driving the cost. It's a regulatory question, and it's actually a fee that's being paid to PG&E. So the levels are the new plans and the cost levels are changing, and you're going to want to pay. We'll link to this in the notes. You can drop down to the lowest cost plan, which is set at parity with PG&E, and the clean energy mix is a little bit higher, you can go with that kind of mid-tier plan, which was always meant to be priced at parity with PG&E while offering more renewables, but is now going to be more expensive. It's going up by about $4 a month for the average resident. Or you can go to total green, which is, I think, another $4 on top of that more a month, which allows you to purchase what is effectively 100% renewable. Now it's using credits, because solar and wind are intermittent. There's a lot of detail behind this, to be clear, but basically the point is rates are going up. I explained a bit about why. If you want the lowest possible rates that are comparable with just the base PG&E plan, you need to move down. You need to actually opt down into what I believe is called green value now. So we will put it in the show notes for folks, but that's the bottom line. And really, council had no choice in the matter. There weren't a lot of options in terms of what we could do, just because this is a fee that's being imposed by the state.
All right, I think we knocked that one out pretty quickly. I know your day's pretty crammed, so I'm going to let you go and get this ready to get posted.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. Appreciate it. Talk soon.
Bye.
Take care. Bye, everybody.